The morning light filtered through the gauzy curtains, casting soft patterns on the wooden floor. Our small neighborhood, a collection of uniform houses and manicured lawns, was waking up to the quiet rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. It seemed peaceful, idyllic, even like any other day in a community where appearances were maintained with obsessive precision. Beneath the surface, however, ran an undercurrent of control, a delicate balance orchestrated by the iron fist of our homeowners association, led by Karen. Karen, her name rolled through the neighborhood like a whispered warning. She was the kind of person who threatened fines over the slightest disregard of HOA guidelines and relished every opportunity to remind us of her authority. Her latest edict involved the color of our mailbox posts. They must be navy blue, a decision she made unilaterally in a meeting that barely anyone attended. It seemed inconsequential at first, just paint. Really, but it was a symptom of something deeper, more insidious. The control she wielded was as suffocating as the humid summer air. Karen's petty tyranny hardly surprised me. I suppose she didn't see the irony in forcing uniformity while claiming to preserve the neighborhood's character. My wife, Laura, and I had discussed it with quiet amusement. Laura was unfazed, a steady rock in a raging sea. Her composure never wavered, a testament to her training. Her life in Delta Force, a life Karen could never imagine. The thought made me smile, a secret joke between us. But the serenity of our lives was tested that Tuesday morning. A slim envelope slid through our mailbox, its contents as predictable as the sunrise. A fine this time. For an overgrown shrub, the offending plant had dared to exceed the prescribed height by a mere inch. Karen's signature in perfect cursive at the bottom, a flourish of superiority. I imagined her satisfaction as she wrote it, the triumph of another small victory. I showed it to Laura as she sipped her coffee. Her eyes unreadable. She simply nodded. A slight quirk of her lips, the only acknowledgement. No words were necessary. We both understood this was Karen's game. I found it amusing that Karen, in her quest for power, was oblivious to the force of nature. She was attempting to intimidate. Nature, after all, can't be subdued by rules or regulations, much like my wife. As the day unfolded, I went about my routine, trimming the shrub to compliance, each snip of the shears a quiet defiance. It was an uncomplicated act, yet filled with a sense of purpose. I could almost feel Karen's eyes peering from her window, counting the leaves as they fell. Her presence was a constant, an omnipresent force that hovered at the fringes of our lives, feeding on the illusion of control. The neighborhood, unaware of the storm brewing beneath its serene exterior, continued its dance of normalcy. Children played on sidewalks, unaware of the underlying tensions, their laughter a poignant reminder of innocence. I watched them, my thoughts drifting. Karen's reign would not last forever. I knew this as surely as I knew the seasons would change. Change would come, but not as expected. Our lives would remain our own. I promised myself. Karen didn't yet know the futility of her attempts to intimidate us. Her world was about power. Ours was about endurance. And in the battle of resilience versus authority, I placed my bets on the force of nature by my side. Laura, with her quiet strength, was a storm in waiting, and when she chose to unleash it, Karen would understand the folly of mistaking civility for vulnerability. The day drew to a close. The neighborhood bathed in dusk's gentle glow. I stood beside Laura as we watched the sunset. A moment of tranquility before the inevitable storm. In the silence, I felt a sense of anticipation, a quiet thrill. Karen had played her hand, but the game was far from over, and as the shadows lengthened, I knew the next move was ours. The day after the confrontation was unnervingly quiet, as if the neighborhood itself held its breath, waiting to exhale the tension that lingered from the previous day. The sun peered over the rooftops, casting long, accusatory shadows across our manicured lawn. A stark reminder of the peculiar balance of power we had inadvertently disrupted. Karen, The HOA president, with a penchant for control, wasn't one to let sleeping dogs lie. Her retaliation began subtly, an orchestration of inconvenience and intimidation. First, it was the notice's crisp, white sheets of paper that appeared with alarming regularity. Taped to our door, like unwelcome guests. The violations listed were absurdly minor. Laughable even grass, 2 shades too long. Trash bins left an inch askew. The audacious color of our mailbox, which apparently offended the delicate aesthetic of the street. These pedantic grievances were the whispered edges of a greater storm. Karen's true talent lay in her ability to weave a narrative, a tapestry of whispers and insinuations that spread through the neighborhood with the insidiousness of a viral video. The gossip grew legs, sprinting from porch to porch, each iteration more grotesque than the last. We became the subjects of a communal game of telephone, where the truth was but a distant cousin to the tales spun about us. The neighbors, once amiable faces waving from across driveways, adopted a cooler demeanor. Their smiles, now slight and constrained, revealed more in their absence than presence. Paranoia crept in, a shadow that lingered just beyond the periphery of vision. Every glance seemed weighted with judgment. Every conversation an unspoken confirmation of our outsider status. I found myself studying the notices, their language a curious blend of legalese and passive aggression. They were expertly crafted, each word a tool in Karen's arsenal. Yet, for all her efforts, there was a miscalculation, a fatal underestimation of my wife's resolve. She was not the fragile flower they presumed her to be, a misassumption that could only stem from ignorance or arrogance. Her training had instilled in her a patience, a calm resilience that was as unyielding as the mountains. She navigated the landmines of suburban warfare with the precision of a tactician, her demeanor unflappable where others saw chaos. She found opportunity. In quiet moments, I marveled at her composure. Her eyes, steady and clear, were pools of untapped strength, a silent reminder of the sacrifices and the fortitude that defined her. She bore the weight of the situation with a grace that defied the pettiness of Karen's machinations. The absurdity of the situation was not lost on me. Our lives had become an improbable blend of suburban melodrama and military precision, an ironic juxtaposition that would be amusing if not for the stakes involved. Karen's misjudgment was her belief that intimidation could sway us, that her proxies of power were sufficient to bend our will. But she had not reckoned with the quiet might of a woman who had faced far graver threats than neighborhood politics. In trying to cage us with bureaucracy and bluster, Karen had inadvertently set the stage for her own unraveling. The real battle was not one of compliance or submission, but of endurance. And in that arena, my wife was unmatched. The notices continued, piling up like a collection of unwanted postcards from a vacation gone awry. Each one was a testament to Karen's obsession, yet also to our defiance. They were markers of a game she had already lost, though she did not yet know it. And as the days unfolded, it was clear that the reckoning was not far off. The early morning light felt like a wash of clarity across the kitchen table, where I sat with an open laptop and a notebook cluttered with dates, names, and bullet-pointed grievances. The HOA's sins were myriad, each a small barb aimed at slicing the patience of our neighborhood. But what they did to Janet, that was the jagged point that had pierced the skin of tolerance I'd maintained for too long. Janet was still asleep upstairs, her breathing steady and calm, unbothered by the storm that had rolled in the night before. She was like that unflappable, a still lake beneath which unseen currents of strength flowed, delta force. They'd never have guessed. The Karen from the HOA certainly didn't, her finger trembling on a trigger that was more bravado than threat. She hadn't realized the woman standing before her was forged in the crucible of conflict, had stared down the barrel of far more dangerous adversaries. For Janet, it was just another day, but for me, it was the day I decided enough was enough. I had spent the previous evening combing through bylaws and regulations, the dry legalese a weapon in my arsenal. The internet was a generous ally, its depths offering up tactics and strategies employed by those who had walked this path before. I wasn't looking for a fight, but for a way to dismantle the head of the Hydra without drawing blood. An elegant counter, subtle and precise. The camera footage was my first play, a silent witness to the encounter on our porch. It showed the steely resolve in Janet's eyes as Karen's voice rose, a cacophony of indignation and misplaced authority. The video would be my shield, the undeniable truth when the time was right. The sun crept higher as I drafted an email to the HOA board, every word chosen with care, an invisible ink of irony and formality. I painted a picture of concern for the neighborhood, artfully weaving in the notion that perhaps Karen's leadership needed reevaluation. I left unsaid the chaos she wrought, but the implication hung like a shadow over the text. I could hear Janet stirring upstairs, the creaking of floorboards a melody of morning routines. The sound was comforting, a reminder of the anchor she was in. This turbulent sea, my heart was steady, a slow drumbeat of resolve as I clicked send, setting the wheels in motion. There was an irony in using their own systems against them, a quiet satisfaction in the knowledge that Karen would find herself ensnared by the very bylaws she wielded as weapons. My mind wandered to the meeting I'd scheduled, a casual gathering of neighbors under the guise of community spirit. I planned to sow seeds of doubt, let them root and grow until they burst through the concrete of Karen's authority. The day stretched before me with all the promise of a blank canvas. I knew Janet would understand the subtle counter I was preparing. She had always believed in the power of the mind over the might of muscle, in the resilience of quiet defiance over overt confrontation. As I closed the laptop, the room filled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee, a prelude to the conversation we'd have about the next steps. The battle was afoot, but it was one of nuance and strategy. I embraced the challenge, feeling the strength of purpose in every breath. Karen had played her hand, but I held the cards she couldn't see, and as the day unfolded, I felt the quiet power of inevitability whispering in the spaces between thoughts. The sun crept over the horizon, like a silent witness, casting elongated shadows across our neighborhood. The chaos of the previous day still loomed in the air, thick and suffocating, like smoke from a distant wildfire. Jane didn't speak much that morning. Her silence was a fortress, impenetrable and watchful, each quiet moment a testament to her resolve. But silence was a language I understood well. It spoke of plans carefully laid beneath the surface, like the roots of an ancient tree. The HOA, with its petty tyrannies and absurd demands, had awakened something within Jane that should have remained dormant, a deep reservoir of discipline and strategic thinking honed by years of service. The legal steps we took were not loud or brash. They were quiet whispers in the dark, paperwork and signatures that held more power than any shouted threat. Our attorney, a sharp mind with a penchant for detail, crafted a case that was as taut as a drawn bow, ready to let loose its arrow. The HOA had overstepped. Their intimidation was not just criminal, it was foolish. The arrogance of small power, I mused, is often its undoing. Jane's military connection secured evidence with the precision of a surgical strike, surveillance footage, damning emails, and witness testimonies were compiled into a dossier that was as undeniable as gravity. I found myself watching Jane as she prepared the documents, her movements smooth and deliberate, like a pianist playing an intricate sonata. Her eyes, usually so warm, were now cool and calculating, a storm contained just beneath the surface. The meeting with the HOA board was set in their own opulent clubhouse, a monument to their own self-importance. The irony was palpable. They didn't know what was coming, couldn't sense the storm gathering just beyond their comfortable bubble. As we entered the room, their confidence was almost tangible, a wall of smug assurance But that wall would soon crumble, brick by brick. I could see them trying to read Jane, to find a sign of weakness. They found none. It was a scene worthy of theater. The unveiling of our evidence was met with disbelief, slowly turning to fear. The HOA president, the self-anointed king of our little neighborhood, turned a shade paler with every piece of paper we laid before him. His eyes darted like a trapped animal's, searching for an escape that didn't exist. In that moment, Jane spoke just a few words, not loud, but with the weight of a judge's gavel. It was the only dialogue needed. The effect was immediate. The room fell into a silence so profound it seemed to echo off the walls. Reflection crept in, like an unwelcome guest, the realization of their overreach, their fragility laid bare. The irony was not lost on me. They were so adept at enforcing arbitrary rules, yet completely unprepared when faced with the consequences of their own actions. As we left, a sense of equilibrium returned. The scales had tipped, justice balanced by quiet resolve and strategic precision. Jane's hand brushed mine, a simple gesture, but one that spoke volumes. We walked out into the bright morning, where the shadows had shifted, leaving clarity in their wake. The neighborhood seemed different now, as if it had shed an old skin, revealing something new and unblemished beneath. The air was clear, the threat dispelled, and I knew that this peace was hard-won and deserved. In the end, the HOA's reign of pettiness had faltered, undone by their own hubris and the quiet strength of a soldier who was never truly off duty. The aftermath of chaos often brings a silence that feels too loud. The community was a tapestry of frayed ends, but there was a sense of resilience, fibers slowly reweaving themselves together. Karen, with her paper-thin authority, had been temporarily silenced. The neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief, though uncertainty still lingered like a shadow at dusk. My wife, a figure of unassuming strength, had become the quiet hero of our cul-de-sac. Neighbors, previously bound by nothing more than proximity, now shared knowing glances and polite nods, a silent acknowledgement of battles fought and peace on the horizon. She had trained for threats substantially more daunting than HOA politics, yet her demeanor remained unchanged, as if vanquishing Karen's tyranny was just another day, another mission. The air was crisp, the kind of autumn day that smelled of wet leaves and approaching frost. It was here, in this tranquil setting, that the reality of our victory settled in. Yet victory is a complex beast, never as clean as one imagines. Karen, with her perpetual scowl and clipboard, was a formidable opponent, unyielding in her quest for dominance. Her intentions, however misguided, had stemmed from a genuine desire for control amidst her chaotic life. The community held a meeting, a forum of sorts, to address the debris left by recent events. It was an odd assembly, a mixture of relief and wariness, as if we were all waiting for the other shoe to drop. My wife stood by my side, her presence a calming anchor. She didn't speak much, didn't need to. Her actions had already scripted a narrative that words could not. As the meeting unfolded, I realized Karen's influence had waned, her words now reduced to static in the background. Her attempts to regain control were met with polite deflection, her once commanding presence diminished to a whisper. The tables had turned. The community, previously fragmented by fear, now found strength in unity and purpose. There was a hum of renewed camaraderie, neighbors exchanging small smiles and soft laughter. It was as if we had all awakened from a shared nightmare. The morning light casting away the shadows that had loomed so large. The street felt different now. The air lighter, conversations more genuine. It was not a utopia, but it was ours, shaped by the struggles we had faced together. Karen remained a fixture, but her edges had softened, her ambition tempered by the reality of failure. I saw her one morning, standing at the edge of her lawn, a contemplative silhouette against the rising sun. A silent truce had formed, an understanding that not all battles are won with force. Some simply fade into memory, lessons etched in the lines of time. We had not vanquished an enemy, only redefined what it meant to be a community. It was a symphony of ordinary moments, underscored by the knowledge that we were stronger together. My wife had taught us that power lies not in fear, but in quiet resilience, a lesson that would linger long after the leaves had fallen. In the end, it was the simple things, shared smiles, borrowed tools, helping hands that fortified our neighborhood. As we moved forward, we carried with us the memory of conflict, not as a burden, but as a testament to our resilience. The community was restored, and Karen, sidelined but present, served as a reminder that every story has more than one perspective. And so, life continued, each day a new chapter in the ever-evolving narrative of our lives.